What I want to talk to you about today are adversarial Gowers games. So before, I will recall what Gowers games are and what is the reason Gowers define them, introduce them. So I will perhaps write the title. It's Ramsey Determinacy of adversarial Gowers games. So, what is a Gowers game? So Gowers wanted to prove Masaya-Silver-like theorem in a Banach space, so an infinite dimensional Ramsey result, where so in Masaya-Silver's theorem or Garvin-Precrice one, you color infinite subsets of n, and you want to get an infinite subset. All of those further subsets share the same color, and there you want to have the same kind of results, coloring so infinite dimensional and closed subspaces of some separable Banach space, and get an infinite dimensional and closed subspace. Most of whose subspaces share one color, say, approximately. So firstly, the first remark is that in this way you can do it because you need some order. So in order to prove, for example, Matthias-Silver or Garvin-Precrice theorem, you make wide use of the order on n. So here we won't color arbitrary subspaces, but rather block subspaces or block bases of some basis. So I will recall what it is. So we consider I an infinite separable Banach space, infinite dimensional. I recall that a sequence EI indexed by the natural numbers is a basis, so a Schauder basis. If every element of E can be written in a unique way, so there is a unique sequence of real such that x is the sum of the xi ei, and that block basis of a Schauder basis. So we will say that fk is a block basis or block sequence of EI. If so, I will here write the elements of EI, so E0, E1, etc. If F0 is a linear combination of a finite number of EI, so from E0 to some En0, so F0 is a linear combination of this one, and then F1 is a linear combination of finite number of EI from En0 plus 1 to some En1, etc. And then we have that a block basis is a Schauder basis of the closed subspace it spans. So such a subspace will be called a block subspace, and so we want to have an infinite dimensional Ramsey result where we color block bases. So actually, we will only restrict our attention to normalized block bases, so that are block bases. All of whose vectors have norm 1, because otherwise you could color the bases according to the norm of their elements, and so you can't find any monochromatic subspace. So in what will follow, every block basis I will consider will be normalized, and so some notations for X a block subspace. I will denote by X between brackets the set of block bases of X, and so I can endo E between brackets, so the set of block sequences of E with a Polish topology by identifying E to a subspace of the set of sequences of elements of the unit sphere of E. So you get it's a G delta, so you get a Polish topology. And then the question is, if we have a regular, quite regular correlation of E between brackets, can we get a monochromatic or an almost monochromatic block subspace? So if we consider a correlation X regular, so of low complexity, for example, Borel or analytic, or even closed, can we find almost monochromatic block subspaces? If we want to have real monochromatic block subspaces, the answer is no, for two reasons. So there are two issues, one minor issue and one major issue, which prevent us to get a real Ramsey result. So I will begin with the minor issue. This minor issue is the lack of finiteness. So actually, when you prove, for example, Galvin-Friedrich theorem with combinatorial forcing, you have to do diagonalization using the fact that the set of I in N, such that I is smaller than some N, is finite. And the analog of this set in the setting of Banach spaces, it's so the analog of this set in the setting of Banach spaces, it's so the unit ball of the span of the n first vector of the basis, so x0, xn, which is infinite. And so you can do diagonalization in the same way. So the solution to this problem is that the unit ball of this is not finite but is compact. So there exists a finite set such that every element of this unit ball is close to an element of this set. And so what we will do is to only look for an approximative Ramsey result. So I will introduce notation. if delta is an infinite sequence of positive real numbers, and if X is a set of block bases, then we will denote by X index delta the set of yi block bases such that there exists xi in X, which is delta close to yi. So such that for I, the distance between xi and yi is less than delta I. And then we will only look for subspaces. Not all of those block subspaces are in X, but are in X delta. But in the general case, this is not enough. This is not enough. There is another issue. So we will try to investigate it. So suppose there is a separable balanced space E with a shadow basis, such that for all X set of block sequences sufficiently regular, and such that for every delta like that and every X block subspace of E, I will denote like that the fact that X is a block subspace, then there exists Y block subspace of X such that so either every block basis of Y belong to X delta, or belongs, or every block basis of Y belongs to the complementary of X, so the approximation of the complementary of X. If we suppose that, so what do we get? So you can consider coloring. What we can do is consider coloring of the block bases, which only depend on the first vector of X, on the first on the first vector of the block basis. What do we get if we do that? So if we color if we color according to the first vector, it's the same than considering. So we get that for A subset of the unit sphere and for all positive delta, there exists, and for all subspace, there exists a further subspace such that either the unit sphere of Y is almost contained in A delta, or is almost contained in the complementary of A delta. So from that, by projection, we get that, and that this kind of result, it's what we call a pigeonhole principle. So and what Stevo told us yesterday is that when you want to have an infinite dimensional Ramsey result, or even a 2 or 3 dimensional Ramsey result, you need a pigeonhole principle. It's a one dimensional Ramsey result, and to get that, you have to reiterate that. That we call it a pigeonhole principle. And the fact is that it was so we have the following. So one direction of this theorem is from Gowers, and the other is so depends on the result of Odell and Schlumppecht. So the theorem says that we have an equivalence between firstly the space E satisfies the pigeonhole principle, and so E satisfies the pigeonhole principle if and only if is C0 saturated. It means that every subspace of E contains a further subspace which is isomorphic to C0. And so we can have this result only in C0 saturated spaces. So the first thing to remark, well, not to remark, but the first result Gowers proves is that actually this is true in a C0 saturated space by iterating this result. So we have the following. So it's Gowers C0 theorem. Let X be a set of block sequences of C0. And so a sequence delta of positive real numbers. Then for all block subspace X, there exists a block subspace Y such that one of the following is true. Either every block sequence of Y belong to X complementary, or every block sequence of Y belong to X approximated by delta. But in the general cases, we can't have that. So we have to weaken one of the hypotheses. And actually, by weakening one of the conclusions, and actually by weakening this conclusion, we can anyway get an almost Ramsey result, so what we call strategical Ramsey result. And to introduce it, I will introduce Gowers' game.
E is C0, right?
What?
What is E? E is C0.
E is C0, yes. Or you can replace C0 by any C0 saturated space, actually. And so, to introduce the result in the general case, I will introduce Gowers' game. So, definitions. Let E a Banach space with basis. N X a set of log bases, and X like that a block subspace. Then the Gowers game Bill X is defined as follows. So it's a two-player game. The first player plays a block subspace of X, and then the second player has to choose so a normalized and with finite support vector of y0. Then the first player plays another subspace of X, and which so they are not related, and the first player and the second player chooses one element of this space. So I should write them y0, 1y, etc. etc.
So what is y0 again?
Y0.
The little y0.
This y0.
Yeah.
It's a vector of y. It's a vector of big y0, which is normalized and with finite support. So there are only a finite number of coordinates which are non-zero. Actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a lot. You will see. The goal of 2 is to build a block sequence. So what we call the outcome of the game is the sequence yes, y0, y1, etc. And so I had to note that this game by this notation because it depends on x and on this x, and the player 2 wins if and only if so the sequence of the y high is a block sequence and belongs to X. So in the remainder of this talk, I will use Christian Rosenthal's convention when speaking about games. Instead of defining games with a set of winning sequences and a winning condition, I will associate to any game an outcome, which is a sequence, and rather say that the player 2 has a strategy to reach some set X, or the player 1 has a strategy to force the player 2 to reach some set X, etc. It's more convenient in most cases in what we'll do. So actually, I will only denote this game by Gx, omitting this X, because yes, only the rule does matter. And the theorem, the general Gowers theorem, is the following. Let X be an analytic subset of E. Oh, so I forgot to say that X has to be analytic here too. Let X be an analytic subset of E, and the entire sequence. Then for X subset of E, there exists Y a further subspace such that one of the following holds. So either every block sequence of Y belongs to the complementary of X, or the player 2 as a strategy in the game gx to reach x delta. And that means that actually, even if not all in gy, that means that actually, even if all block sequences of y do not belong to this set, there are a lot of sequences who belong to this set. So how to prove this? The proof is you just have to do a combinatorial forcing as in N, and the fact is that in N at some point you have to use the pigeonhole principle, and there when you have to use the pigeonhole principle, then you stop there and you almost exactly get this. So actually you can deduce this one from this one by so we have the following results, which is that if X is a block subspace of C0 and X like that, and delta as usual. If 2 as a strategy in gx to reach x, then there exists a further block subspace of x such that every block sequence of y belongs to x approximated. So actually, this is just a weakening of this, and with the pigeonhole principle, from this you can get this. So now, before introducing adversarial Gowers games, I have to present Christian Rosendal's version of this theorem. So Rosendal given quite different version of this theorem in countable spaces, in countable vector spaces, and without approximation. But this comes to the price to weakening the first conclusion. So in Rosendal's setting, we will consider E a countable dimensional vector spaces over a countable field. So we don't have to consider block sequences and block subspaces, etc., because in this setting, every infinite dimensional subspace contains a block subspace, so you can avoid all of this. And so for X, subspace of E, we define so the Gowers game gx in the same way. So the player 1 plays the space of x, and player 2 chooses a vector, so we don't have to have any assumption of this vector, and then player 1 chooses another subspace, and player 2 chooses another vector, etc. And the outcome is the sequence of the yi. And we will define another game, which is the asymptotic game. The asymptotic game, it's almost exactly the same, but here these spaces, so these spaces, these have to be of finite codimension. So what we call the asymptotic game what we denote by fx is the same, excepted that the yi are required of finite codimension, of finite codimension. And the theorem is let x to be this time an arbitrary subset of arbitrary sequences of vectors, which is analytic. So you put the discrete topology on E and the product topology here, and X a subspace of E. Then there exists a further subspace Y of X, such that either player 1 has a strategy in the asymptotic game for Y to reach the complement of X, or 2 as a strategy in GY to reach X. So this Fy just comes to avoid the approximation. Actually, it's not hard to see. I won't prove it because I don't have the time. But it's not hard to see than that, for example, in a Banach space, if one has a strategy to reach some set in the asymptotic game F for subspace X, then there exists a further subspace of X such that every block sequence of this further subspace belong to X approximating by delta, by some delta. So what you have to remember is that this conclusion is almost the same than saying that every vector of every sequence of Y, every block sequence of Y belongs to X, to the complement of X. But to prove that one implies the other, you need to have this finiteness, this finiteness that we have in hand and that we don't have here. I wanted to say something else. Yes, the other remark is that here you can color all sequences and not only block sequences, because actually in the asymptotic game, the player 1 can force the player 2 to build a sequence that is a block sequence. So it's the last vector played by 1 as support so 2 plays the vector, and then 1 can force 2 to play a vector which is after this vector X by playing the cofinite dimensional subspace of vectors that are after this X. So you can just consider sequences. And now, what are adversarial Gowers games? Adversarial Gowers games are games introduced by Christian, in which both players contribute to the outcome. You see that these games are not real games because only one player is contributing to the outcome and the other player is just setting constraints. In the adversarial Gowers games, one player play in the same time the rule of one in the uncertainty game and the rule of two in the Gowers game, or the opposite. So there are two adversarial Gowers games. So I will define them. The game AX is the following. To begin with playing a subspace x0 of x, so infinite dimensional, and one chooses a vector in x0, and then pick another subspace y0 for the player 2. The player 2 has to choose a vector y0 in this space, and then he picks another subspace x1 for the player 1, which who have to choose a vector x1 in x1, etc. And there, the rules are the following. The xi have to have finite codimension in X, whether the yi can be arbitrary, and then the outcome is the sequence x0, y0, x1, y1, etc. So in this game, 2 is playing the asymptotic game. Is playing the role of the player 1 in the asymptotic game and the role of the player 2 in the Gowers game, and it's the opposite for for 1. And now I think you imagine what should be the second adversarial game. Bx is defined in the same way. Except that here the xi can be arbitrary, and the yi has to have finite codimension. So it's exactly the opposite. And now, so we say that a set X of sequences is adversarial Ramsey if and only if for X there exists a subspace, a further subspace y of X such that so either one as a strategy in which one as a strategy in the one which is the most difficult for him. So here it's the one where he has to play cofinite dimensional subspaces. So it's B. It's B in by or 2 in by to reach x. Or 2 as a strategy in AY to reach the complement of X. So we want we want to find a subspace such that both the player have a winning strategy in the game which is the most difficult for him. What they play, the rule for the vectors they play does not change, do not change, but the rules for the subspaces they play do change. And so, some remarks. So the first remark is that if for gamma a suitable class of subspaces of Polish spaces, if every gamma set of e to the n is adversarial Ramsey, then every gamma set of en is strategically Ramsey. So I didn't define strategically Ramsey, but we say that that a set is strategically Ramsey if it satisfies the conclusion of Rosendorf's version of Gowers' theorem. So either one player has a strategy in F or the other has a strategy in G. And so by doing a projection, by forgetting the moves of one of the two players in this game, you exactly get from this dichotomy the preceding dichotomy. And so if every gamma set is strategically is adversarial Ramsey, then every gamma set is strategically Ramsey. And the second remark is much more interesting. It's that if every gamma subset of En is adversarial Ramsey, then every gamma subset of gamma set of sequence of integer is determined. Why? Because in these games, the players who play subspaces cannot have no control of on the norm of the vectors. So actually, the vectors don't have norm because they are it's not a Banach space, but they can, for example, choose like they want the the first coordinate, the first non-zero coordinate of the vectors they play. And so if we make the set of the winning set depend only on the first non-zero coordinate of each vector played, then you recover determinacy of so classical determinacy from this kind of determinacy. So in the FC, we cannot go beyond Borel. And actually, the theorem is the following. So firstly, Rosendahl proved that every sigma 03 and pi 03 set is adversarial Ramsey by doing a proof inspired by Davis' proof of sigma 03 determinacy. And what I prove is the following. Every Borel subset of En is adversarially Ramsey. And so, how do I prove it in some words? Using determinacy. Christian tried to get it by combining the proof of Borel determinacy with the proof of Gowers' theorem, but I didn't try. But he says that it's quite unlikely to. So he didn't manage to do it, and what I do is deducing this from determinacy of sequences of real numbers. So actually, I define a game. So let kx be defined in the same way that ax and bx, etc. But here, the rules are the following. The rules are only that x0 is a subset of x, and y0 is a subset of x0, arbitrary. They don't have to have finite codimension or something like that. And then x1 is a subset of this one, etc. So they just have to pick a decreasing sequence of subspaces. And so this game is inspired by a game defined by Castanas. Here the K is for Castanas, who proved using determinacy, who proved the Galvin-Pruchry theorem using determinacy. So he used a game like this one, and he deduced determinacy from this game. And what we have is so the outcome is the same, etc. And the main lemma is if one has a strategy in kx to reach x, then one has a strategy. Then there exists a further subspace such that one has a strategy in Bx to reach so the same set X, and we have the same for the player 2 and the game AX. And so you get this lemma by a diagonalization, and from this lemma and the determinacy of this game, you get exactly the theorem. So it doesn't remain a lot of time. I will, in some word, talk about the strength of this result. So we have seen that this result is as strong as Borel determinacy. So it's much stronger than Rosendahl version of Gowers result or than Gowers result. But for example, if you try to do the same in N, so in the setting of Galvin-Pricry, you have the same result. You can easily deduce, but you can easily deduce it for Galvin-Pricry. If you pick a subset such that if you pick a subset which is monochromatic, then obviously you have the determinacy of adversarial Gowers games. In this set, it's obvious. And so what you get is, in N, this result is not at all as strong as Borel determinacy. And even it holds for sigma 11 and pi 11 sets, whereas it doesn't hold for sigma 11 and pi 11 in the setting of vector spaces. So what makes the difference? What makes the difference is the pigeonhole principle. I told that in N there is a pigeonhole principle, so it's an obvious one. It's just the fact that when you color N with the integer with two colors, then there exists an infinite subset which is monochromatic. So it's obvious. In vector spaces, in general, we don't have a pigeonhole principle. And so what I won't do here, but what we can do is defining an abstract setting which unifies the case of N and this case, in which we can define the Gowers game and asymptotic games and adversarial Gowers game, and get a version of this theorem. And what's interesting is that in such a setting, we have that the determinacy of adversarial Gowers games enables to recover determinacy of sequences of set of sequences of integer if and only if the pigeonhole principle holds. So in a space where the pigeonhole principle doesn't hold, I would like to say, in the space where the pigeonhole principle doesn't hold, like here, from the determinacy of adversarial Gowers game, you can recover Borel determinacy, and in a space where this principle does hold, then you have the determinacy of adversarial Gowers. You have the adversarial runtime property even for sigma 11 and pi 11 sets, and it just depends on the classical Ramsey result. So it's just a consequence of the strategical Ramsey property. So yes. So I think I'm done. Some questions? Yes?
Does in this your general setup shows up this difference between analytic and co-analytic? In Gowers' case, the analytic was crucial. So we can't switch.
When there is a pigeonhole principle, actually, you can get a stronger version than Gowers result. So Rosendahl version of Gowers result is the following. I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't have the time. So without pigeonhole, we have that there exists a space such that either one which is x in fy or 2 which is x in gy, and with the pigeonhole principle you can replace this conclusion, so it's a complement, and with pigeonhole principle you can replace this conclusion by the fact that 1 reaches x in fy. So actually, in the general case, this is much more stronger than this, because this is, I told you, almost the same than saying that every block sequence of y belongs to x. It's almost the same. But in the case where there is a pigeonhole principle, this and this are the same. Up to passing to up to taking subspaces, these are the same. And so this result, in the case where there is a pigeonhole principle, this result becomes symmetrical. And so you can switch the two conclusions. And if you have the conclusion for analytic set, you get it for co-analytic sets. When there is no pigeonhole principle, it's totally different, because when there is no pigeonhole principle, you can use a coding method that shows that if you have this result for some class gamma of subspace of Polish spaces, then you have also this result for the projections of gamma. And so, for example, if you had it for pi 1 1 sets, you would also have it for sigma 1 2 sets. And so then the usual proof that sigma 1 2 set that there is a sigma 1 2 set which is not strategically Ramsey in L works, and you get that there is, without pigeonhole principle, there is a pi 1 1 set which is not strategically Ramsey. Yes?
If you assume AD and L of R, do you get all sets adversarial of Ramsey?
What? Sorry? What?
Assume work in L of R with full determinacy. Do you get
No.
every set is adversarial Ramsey?
No. It's a good open question, but actually what I get with this proof is that under ADR, so the full determinacy of sequences of reals, you get that every set is adversarial Ramsey. But for the simple AD, for sequence of integer, it remains open. In fact, it's even open that under AD, every subset of every set of infinite subsets of n is Ramsey. And so if you want to prove it, you would have to get a countable version of Kaspar's games I presented some minutes ago, and it seems unlikely. So I don't know. I don't know if it's true or false. I conjecture that it's true, but I have no idea how to do.
But if you add v equals L of R,
Yeah.
that's a strong.
If I have
V equals L of R, if you have that plus AD,
I don't know.
then all sets are Ramsey.
Yeah, I think that's,
So you get more.
Oh,
so that, so.
so okay.
But he has a way to use Borel determinacy to prove, so very likely that you can adjust.
Hmm.
I think that one has to look at that proof.
Perhaps. So I didn't try that. I didn't try at all, but I can try it. Some other questions? No. Thank you.